Clean drinking water should be a basic human right.
That healthcare is a human right.
I believe that abortion rights are human rights. I believe that they are also economic rights.
Human rights. Human rights. Of human rights and freedom.
Human rights on equity and equality.
Of human rights.
Watch out. You might get what you're after. Cool ladies. Strange but not a stranger. I'm an America. Burning down the house. Hold tight. Wait till the party's over. Hold tight. We're in for nasty weather. There has got to be a way. Burning down the house.
How is it possible that this
Sub-Saharan Africa has suffered its worst setback in decades? That's according to the World Bank, which expects extreme poverty to rise in 2021 for the first time in over 20 years.
and this can exist at the exact same time?
100K, 1 million, 1 billion. Jeff Bezos has 122 of these, or 58 pounds of rice. If each grain of rice was 100K. Like, look how big this is, guys. I'm gonna show you the scale here. I'm gonna put a keyboard in just for fun. Look how deep that goes. That's insane. This is Jeff Bezos' new house that's $145 million in LA. And then, oh my God.
I think a really important way to find the answer to this question is by tracing the relationship between neoliberalism and human rights. Even though I don't condone summing up research about either of these topics with the first Wikipedia definition that came up from a single Google search, I do find that both of these definitions are sufficient for the time being because they both define key principles of both ideas. Human rights are moral principles or norms that describe certain standards of human behavior and are regularly protected in municipal and international law. Neoliberalism defines a free state, free market economy, and everything associated with a free state, free market economy. I think it's also important to note here that both the concepts of neoliberalism and the concepts of human rights, as highlighted by the
UN Universal Declaration of Human Rights,
were responses to the atrocities of World War II. I'm not talking about this World War II. I'm talking about this World War II. The entire world was scared of all the same things at the same time. Totalitarianism, genocide, socialism. So a group of economists got together in Montpellier in Switzerland, and they created what's now known as neoliberalism, which would limit the power of the state in economic affairs, preventing totalitarianism and using a free market as a vehicle for freedom of individuals. At the very same time, the UN created the
UN Universal Declaration of Human Rights
to define the responsibilities of states to maintain human rights. Flash forward to right now. Why are these two things related? Why are they important? Okay, pervasive ideology like neoliberalism that specifically benefits the Western world demonizes state programs and any state enforcement in regards to trade. And then the world's understanding of how human rights are to be maintained insists that the state is the most powerful actor in enforcing human rights treaties and doctrines. These two things are existing in opposition to one another all the time. And it's just getting worse and worse and worse. I think it goes without saying that states are no longer the most powerful actors. In fact, a corporation like Walmart has a higher revenue in 2020 than 167 countries' GDPs. If you're wondering how many countries there are in the world, I think the UN acknowledges that there are 190 countries. So that would mean that Walmart has more revenue than most every country in the world, aside from the Western world. That's an imbalance of power, and that's how human rights get threatened. This imbalance of power has allowed for corporations to do things like destroy our planet. The CDP reported in 2017 that just 100 corporations are responsible for over 70% of CO2 emissions. Additionally, the Farming and Agricultural Organization of the UN reported just this year, deforestation is happening at a rate of 10 million hectares a year, which is about the size of the country of Fiji, or the combined landmass of Vermont and New Jersey, which is a threat to the human right of health and safe living conditions because it exposes us to natural disasters as a result of climate change and puts us at higher risk of interspecies disease contraction, like coronavirus and Ebola. In the last decade, the EU has tried to combat at least climate change through a system called carbon crediting. Essentially, corporations are given a credit for the amount of CO2 they're allowed to produce within a year. But then corporations have found a loophole in the form of carbon trading. This means that if a corporation uses all of their carbon credit and they don't want to be penalized, then they can trade with another corporation who has not used all of their carbon credit and use more carbon. And corporations apply that same neoliberal logic to pretty much everything, including social services, wages, workers' rights, or lack thereof. And this is why I'm saying human rights are at risk as long as neoliberalism exists.